circuit riding preachers of old, proclaiming truth like the holy prophets of old, strong and bold. You're about to hear politically incorrect but biblically correct truth from circuit riding preacher Peter Peters, whose home base is a radio ranch nestled in the Laramie River Valley near Laramie, Wyoming. The radio ranch is a working cattle and horse ranch where circuit riding preacher Peter Peters broadcasts nightly worldwide on the Scriptures for America Worldwide Broadcasting Network, reaching the world through satellite, radio, television, shortwave, and the World Wide Web. Riding for the brand, he preaches for the man, Jesus Christ, the Son of God. His circuit not only includes a radio ranch outreach in Wyoming, but also the LaPorte Church of Christ, located at the base of the colorful Colorado Rocky Mountains in LaPorte, Colorado, where he has preached for over 30 years. The message is preached there by Dr. Peters on Sunday morning or streamed live on the internet and are archived at the ministry website, scripturesforamerica.org. Dr. Peters' politically incorrect but biblically correct sermons are available on CD and DVD. Many in America, Canada, and all over the world are on the free CD and DVD ministry. Our address will be given at the end of this broadcast. And now, here is Dr. and Pastor Peter John Peters with the Word of God.
That we will learn here, or learn any place, is this. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, Jesus Christ. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The law, statutes, and judgments, the Scriptures, the Word. Our God is not some blonde-haired, mustached individual with a long dress on that comes waltzing across the floor. Wherever you see a church that has a graven image or a picture of a God that looks like that, you're looking at a church that probably is an idolatrous church. In the beginning, God created man. In His image created He him. In His image, in God's image, created He them. Male and female created He them. Man, Adam, he who blushes red. He chose them as His special people for a special task on this earth. And He gave them this task to fulfill. And they made pretty much of a hash of it, really. We have the manual, we know how it's done, and we haven't done what's right. The Scriptures speak often of sheep. We are the sheep of His pasture. Sheep have a different temperament from any other animal. They are placid, relatively speaking. The laws, statutes, and judgments that sheep were made in the image of are the guideline for the sheep. All sheep who do not obey the laws, statutes, and judgments are dealt with according to the laws, statutes, and judgments. All rapists, all murderers, all kidnappers are killed. Sheep today are descendants of 1,000 generations of sheep who have had all their murderers, rapists, and kidnappers killed. It's a very unusual thing to find a sheep who will commit murder or steal or kidnap. These are crimes that are seldom ever committed by our people. They do find some, but the law takes care of them. Murderers are not allowed to live. Premeditated murder. A premeditated murderer does not reproduce his own kind. It stops that line right there. There are two kinds of punishment, and only two among the sheep. There's either death or restitution. If you steal something, you steal someone's car, you pay back. They catch you with the car, you pay back 2 cars. If you wrap it around a telephone pole, you pay back 4 cars. Restitution. If you can't make restitution, as in the case of murder, how do you give someone back his life? Rape, kidnapping, these capital crimes, then you pay the ultimate penalty, death. It's either death or restitution, the only 2 punishments. We have no place in a sheep society for prisons. A holding tank until trial can be held, usually within 12 hours or 24 at the latest, and punishment administered. If a person pays the penalty, in the case of stealing, if he can't pay the penalty, he's reduced to servitude until he pays it off. If he runs, he dies. The law is simple. It's quite efficient, simple, and it is the law that we do not have today. Today we have the law of the wolf. A wolf is a different creature. God made sheep, God made wolves, and he made wolves to cull the flock, and they are certainly culling the flock today. A wolf follows no law, only what he wishes to follow, which is called policy. The scripture says that sheep are to have a biblical homestead. Each sheep is to have his own kingdom. The land is to be divided and never ever sold. The scripture says that each sheep has been made a king and a priest. He is to rule that kingdom of his by the king's own law. And he is to be the king and the priest, and none other. I'd like to bring this up. I've been talking to some people, and it seems incredible, but a biblical homestead should be self-sufficient. A person should be able to raise everything he needs on that piece of land, on his own little kingdom, everything he needs. I can remember as a few years ago going down to Petersburg, and I saw a Virginia plantation house up on the right side. It was deserted. You can take a quick look and tell whether anyone's living in it. Nobody was there, but in hopes, I saw the cemetery. It was a pretty large one. So I stopped by to actually see the cemetery. And they had 10 generations of that family living there. Oliver's, well, that was the name. South of Richmond. So knocked on the front door, nobody was living there. I didn't see any cars there. But it was a cottage type, had 3 dormers, and it was a small cottage plantation house. If you know how to build a plantation house, you can do marvelous things with just a relatively small house. You've got trundles, thank you, sir. You've got trundles for the big beds. You can have rooms that you would think would only handle 2 to 4 people, can easily handle 8. I can remember Hunley Hall, going into Hunley Hall. Each room upstairs, they only had 4 rooms upstairs, 4 bedrooms, but each room had a double bed in each corner. So each room would sleep at 8 people. And we had 4 rooms, would easily sleep 32. And that's not counting the bedrooms downstairs. That was Hunley Hall. And then we have Rose Hill. That belongs to one of my cousins. My father's mother was a Hunley. 10 generations of Hunleys are buried there. A Hunley still live at Rose Hill. But there are few of these biblical homesteads still there. extremely difficult to keep a place like that by farming. And unless you do something else, you're liable to lose the land. The land is not to be sold. It's not ever to be sold. I remember going way back up in the mountains near the priest over in Nelson County, and I got up on top of the priest, and it's like another world. It's very difficult to get off the priest, about 15 miles actually. And they had farms up there. And this was when I was a youngster. And I remember a man had wore homespun clothes. He had come down from the top of the priest maybe 3 or 4 times in his lifetime. His wife had never come down from the priest, ever. And he had everything he needed. The only thing he needed was occasional salt and a few tools. And he could supply all of that with a little bit of tobacco that he raised and sold. I really don't think he made $1,000 a year. And he had everything he needed, everything. He was very well educated. He had all the books that he needed. He traded with people constantly. He traded with other people who did other things that he didn't do. And it was an entirely different existence. He's gone now. The state has taken his land. And there are very few of those people left. But this is the ideal. If you're an engineer and you want to go to town and set up your laboratory, by all means do it. If you get tired of doing what you're doing, you can always go home and put a plow in the ground and raise your groceries. Now, today we're finding out what it's like to live in a wolf society. A wolf society is very, very different from that of the sheep. A wolf runs in a pack. You have an alpha wolf. An alpha wolf is the head of the pack. And the reason he's the head of the pack is anybody who challenges him, he'll kill him. And everybody does what the alpha wolf says. And everybody gets along very well. If they don't do what the alpha wolf says, they are driven away or killed. And that's the way a wolf pack is established. The biggest killer of wolves are other wolves. We've gone into this before, but I want to refresh your memory. I've got a book on the wolves and the sheep. The concept is real important to get down and to start thinking in these terms. Everyone you meet is either a wolf or a sheep. A wolf pack is the ideal structure for today's corporation. Sheep operate under sole ownership of partnerships, at the most joint ventures. In England, it was against the law to incorporate. The only person allowed to incorporate was the king. It required an act of parliament if you wanted to get incorporated, because corporations issue stock, and you never know who owns a corporation once they issue stock, because stock can be bought and sold and traded. So in other words, you don't know who the controlling stockholder is. The controlling stockholder is the alpha wolf. The dominant board of directors, the dominant wolves, are placed on the board of directors by the controlling stockholder. Under him is a chief executive officer. Then you have plant managers. Then you have foremen. And then you have stair-stepping all the way down to the bottom. And finally you get to the poor floor sweeper who goes around sweeping the floors. And all the hair has been pecked off his head because all the other chickens, are pecking on him. That's the pecking order of the corporation. A corporation is ancient. That's what you will find in a wolf society, the corporate structure. The concept of kings, that is also a wolf concept. You have a king at the top. You have the people at the bottom. The king hires soldiers to keep the people in line. And there you have it all over again. The wolf pack in another form. Armies. You have sheep armies and you have wolf armies. The sheep armies are formed of militias. They are volunteer militias. You'll notice these monuments that we just saw today at Sharpsburg, the battle at Antietam. You will note that it says various companies. If it's a volunteer company, it says so. The people wish to make the difference between being a volunteer company and being a regular army or a drafted company. If it's not volunteer, it doesn't say volunteer on it. But if it's the 5th New York Volunteer Infantry, it's a volunteer sheep organization. That meant that every man in the organization furnished his own uniform, bought his own gun, furnished his own shoes, he furnished his own kit and equipment. Today, that would cost you to the tune of $2,500. Very expensive. As a general rule, the sheep armies, the volunteers, were far better armed than the wolf armies. Wolf armies, you can always tell, they all look alike. Got all the same kind of uniform, got all the same kind of guns, got all the same kind of knapsacks, all the same kind of hats, because that's what the alpha wolf bought at the cheapest place he could possibly get them. He got them all at one time. They all look like, all his men look alike. He pays them all. That's not the way a sheep army is organized, a militia army. A militia army is a volunteer army. They get together and they elect their officers. When the war broke out, Virginia did not want any part of secession. Virginia did not want any part of war. Virginia had made 3 or 4 efforts at compromise, a chance of bringing the sections of the country together to work this thing out, and nothing worked. And finally, when Abraham Lincoln called for soldiers to invade the South, Virginia said, you're not going to cross through Virginia, and they made a call for arms. I've told you this before. Amherst County next door, every able-bodied man in that county volunteered. Now remember, everybody is a member of the militia, even to this day, under the old colonial laws. From age 16 to 60, you're all members of the militia. Now, you're constituted members of the militia. If you're unorganized, you're unorganized. If you're organized, you're probably in jail, because they had trouble with these militias. Sharpsburg. They had trouble. Militia men are hard to handle. Militias are hard to handle. They are real hard to handle. Down in South Africa, they had 5,000 boys, kept at one time 1/3 of British soldiers fighting them on even odds. I mean, the guerrilla warfare of 5,000 men made monkeys out of the entire British Empire. A militia is, well, we see what happened down there in Waco. You can call that what you want. These big brave men went in there, and kicked down doors, and people didn't want them to do that, and they came up with 20% casualties. I don't know what casualties there were inside, but there were old women and, babies and everywhere. That's a militia. I don't know what sort of weapons they had, but I bet you they were good. And I did see this. I saw a clip with the ATF guys walking off, 30 or 40 of them, walking off with their hands over their heads like this. If they had wanted to keep them captive and used for hostage, they could have done it. Practically the whole attacking force could have been gobbled up if they had wanted to. Which is a very interesting concept. They let them come out and pick up their wounded and take them off. The people inside the compound are wounded and need a doctor, and they won't let a doctor come in. It's real interesting, the difference between the sheep and the wolf. Now, I don't know anything about these Davidian people. I don't know what they believe in, but I really don't think that they ought to be subjected to people coming in and kicking in the upstairs windows and trying to get in the house in the middle of the night, or whatever they're trying to do. To me, it just doesn't sound right to me. And I think really, which would you rather have? One of these Davidian people knocking on your front door, or somebody kicking in the window upstairs trying to get in, These militia groups Now, I want to bring these concepts up because lots of us haven't thought about these things in a long time. Our people moved down there to Texas. They had trouble with the Mexicans down there. The Mexicans moved in an army. The Texas settlers called up their militia groups. And they fought a couple of battles with them and got whipped. But they learned. And the last 2 or 3 battles, they completely annihilated the Mexican army. A handful of Texans. That's what militia armies can do. They're volunteer armies. During the war between the states, it was fought on the southern side with militia armies. The Boers, but before even that, in Virginia, from the very earliest days, everyone was constituted a member of the militia. Every member, every head of the household was expected to be armed and mounted and uniformed, clothed, at his own expense. The state of Virginia, the militia of Virginia, could put as many as 8,000 mounted people into a battle anywhere, at any time they wanted to. 8,000. Now that is as many as some continental armies had. The governor himself only had 500. When the governor and the militia of Virginia in Bacon's Rebellion, they started clamoring, Virginia militias whipped them every single time. The Indians tried their warfare against these people, and the militias ate them alive. They couldn't run away from them because they were mounted. There were too many of them. They weren't too many at one point, but by the time they had all gathered together and were used for what they were designed to be used for, they were the most formidable force in North America at that time. You know, it's real odd they don't teach these things, because that's a very important thing. The Virginia, the well-armed housekeeper of Virginia. Sheep have laws. We've got 10 of them. That's called the 10 Commandments. The laws, statutes, and judgments. Wolves have policy. Whatever the plant manager wants, that's what you're going to get. Whatever the king wants, that's what you're going to get. Whatever the ATF wants, that's what you're going to get. Now, so far as I can tell, there has been no pretense at legality in Idaho. They suspected him. They wanted to arrest him on a misdemeanor. You go in there and shoot 2 people for a misdemeanor, that's the same as a traffic ticket. That's not lawful. On a trespass, inciting the people, and then trying to ambush them, and then killing 2 of them, and shooting a woman holding a baby, and then the shooter, actual shooter, I saw the press release. He said that the restrictions on shooting Vicky were lifted because a psychiatrist said that, in his opinion, Vicky was suicidal and might kill herself and perhaps her children. And so that's why he shot her? Before she could kill herself?
Calling evil good and good evil.
Now these people are walking around over here. See? You might go to town and they wear plain clothes and they're hard to tell. And he might see you. And I don't know exactly how you go around looking suicidal, but don't do it. Wouldn't it be interesting? You remember some few weeks ago out in the West, somebody went in McDonald's and killed a whole raft of people? You suppose it could have been, no, one of those ATF fellas off on leave, you know? And he went in there and thought that group looked suicidal? Now, wouldn't that be interesting now, huh? sheep society is different from wolf society. It looks different. It smells different. A sheep society are made up of people who work for themselves. They have they're fishermen, they're farmers, they're artisans, gunsmiths. They're blacksmiths. I can remember as a boy growing up on a hill. There used to be a blacksmith lived up on a hill, and he used to do wonderful things in that shop. He would put the blowers on and blow air into this, and sparks would come up, and he'd put steel in there and take it out and hammer it into all sorts of things. He could make horseshoes. He could make wagon rims, and a wagon rim was smaller than the steel tire was smaller than the wagon rim, but he would heat it up all around until it would expand, and then he would put it on a tire and it would shrink down and hold that whole thing together. Wonderful thing. And I was 8 years old, and he said, Dick, he said, don't you want to be a blacksmith when you grow up? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, you go ask your granddad if you can come up here and be my apprentice. Apprentice. All right, the key. How long can you keep an apprentice, a slave, a apprentice slave? 7 years. No more than 7 years. How long is the apprentice? 7 years. You keep someone for 8, what are you guilty of? Slavery. You keep the man 8 years. At the end of 7 years, the apprentice is to know his trade and is to be furnished with the tools of that trade. If you hire somebody on and to apprentice them for 30 years, what is that? That is slavery. Now, any of you who work for somebody else for more than 7 years, and he pays you something for it, what are you? You're a slave. That's what you are. And don't call it anything else. And don't think you're going to get some fine retirement or something like that. We're in a recession right now, and you see the people 55, 60, and 65 years old. You see what they're doing. They're being thrown out in the streets. They're the first ones to go. I was 63 years old, and all I did was write a little history book. I don't know why that should upset anyone. But,
Well, did they controversial with it?
well, not very. But by the time the New York Times got through with it, and the Lynchburg newspapers got through with it, I walked in. Now, I was a senior vice president, 33 years at my business. I was making considerably more money than most of the people in the business, in my company, and I was terminated. As of that time, I had 12 hours to get everything out of my desk. 30 years accumulation out of my desk in 12 hours. Thankfully, I had 2 or 3 other irons in the fire. Do you have 2 or 3 other irons in the fire? It is better to work as a street sweeper. It is better to work as a cutting lawns for a living than to be a plant manager of a Wolf Corporation. Because as a plant manager of a Wolf Corporation, you are expendable. And you go into the yuppie neighborhoods where all these people, corporate figures live, all of them are slaves. I had breakfast with them in the morning. The corporate slaves, let me see if I've got this right now. 2 or 3 of them are college professors. 1 is an atomic engineer, good too. 2 or 3 public school teachers. 2 salesmen, good. 1 very opinionated secretary. You cannot get I can't say good morning, she says, is it? But she's great anyway. They do not have an opinion on anything that could conceivably be controversial. That is a slave mentality. You wonder why people outside don't have opinions on anything? What is a slave supposed to do? A sheep does not bite the paw of the wolf who feeds him. It just doesn't happen. For a word of advice, try to get your own job. Try to get your own business doing something. Work toward it. Work toward it. Work toward it. Or else you'll be a slave the rest of your life. And that fear, that gnawing fear, wondering if you've done the right thing, wondering if you're going to be laid off, wondering if you're up to par, wondering if you've made somebody happy, wondering if your job is going to be phased out, wondering if you're going to be cut because you're too old, wondering, fear, fear, fear your whole life. You remember that picture we saw at Sharpsburg, that the visitor center, they had all those books in there, and in the cover of one book you saw 3 Southern POWs standing there. That was the look of the eagle. That was the look of a king. They were prisoners, but they were kings. The man that I saw up in the mountains when I was a boy, he was a king. He was kind, he was gentle, he was generous, but I was a visitor in his kingdom, and he was a gracious host. The look of a slave is very, very different from the look of a slave. There are more people from the Midwest and Far West who are free than there are on the East Coast. Goodness knows, I thought certainly Virginia would be the first to rise in wrath with the things that have gone on. You see what Virginia's like. I mean, it breaks your heart. It makes you ashamed. But these things, now I want to tell you a story. Once upon a time, a group went out to take pictures. I can't imagine people going on an expedition out to the desert to take pictures. But they did. And while they were out there, they took this mule, and he was a flea-bitten mule, and the most beat-down thing that you ever saw. And you could hardly get him to make you one step in front of the other, and complain the whole way out. Somehow or another, they unloaded that mule, and they didn't tie him up properly, and guess who got loose? One mule is loose. And the next day, they tried to run him down. Forget it. 3 days later, they looked over and saw a strange mule. They didn't know they had mules around there. Kicking up his heels and raising the sand over the hill, looking at the yee-yaw, yee-yaw. You know what mule that was? That was the mule that had been lost just 3 days prior. It took only 3 days to convert that mule from a slave mule into a real free mule. And that's the way it's going to be here in this country. I've got some other stories along that line, how quick transformation takes. Wolves have corporations, stock companies. They have lifetime worker slave sheep. They have monopolies. Monopolies are forbidden by law. Wolves have monopolies. Wolves have slaves. Once upon a time, there were people named Romans. And these early Romans were farmers. That's what they did. They had small farms. But up to the northwest, there was another group called Etruscans. And these people were wolves. And they had come in from another land. And they worshiped all those things that you shouldn't worship. You get in one of those Etruscan tombs and they've got sex scenes and things like that you wouldn't believe. Now they did strange things. They came down and beat up on the Romans, whipped them, made slaves out of them. And they built big buildings. They built big bridges. They had land there that needed draining, so they built underground drains, giant underground drains, big enough to drive a chariot through. Now that requires slave labor. They built fleets of great ships, Etruscan ships, that brought goods from abroad. And finally the Romans said, enough of it. So the Romans rose up against the Etruscans and ran away. And the great ships disappeared from the seas. And no more big buildings were built, and those that had been built fell into decay. And the Romans went back to farming their land. You see, a free king like that accumulates more and keeps more and has more than many, many slaves. As slaves to the Etruscans, they had no future. As free kings, they had a great future. God says, no king. I have made each of you a king and a priest. I don't want you to have another king, but we must have a king like our neighbors. Excuse me. I have a boy. His name is Robert Byrd. He's named after his granddaddy. He fought in the 1st Virginia Continental Line, Richmond Light Infantry Blues, down at Yorktown. And I don't know where he gets his pig-headedness from. But there was a VW that had been owned by a colored drug pusher in Lynchburg that had, flames down the side of it, and the drug pusher was in jail. So he figured he could buy it relatively cheap, but he had to have that car. That was the best drug dealer's looking car that I have ever seen. Now, if you like drug dealers' cars, you would have. I talked to that boy, and I talked to that boy, and I talked to that boy. And I said, son, you really shouldn't get a drug dealer's car, especially if he's a colored drug dealer. Because the things that they do to the cars are just really, but you couldn't talk to him. And I just finally had it with the boy. So guess what I did to teach the boy a lesson? I let him buy it. It was the dirtiest trick I ever played on that boy. I'm really sorry now I did it, First the engine fell off, and then the muffler fell off, and then the fenders fell off, and the headlights, and you just name it. And it filled up with water. Every time it rains, 6 inches of water in the bottom. Lord, you have to keep the pumps going all the time, And you get in, and just any day you couldn't see it because it's the mist from the inside, on the windows. Well, anyway, I don't want you to have a king, no king but me. You are kings and priests. Oh, but we need a king like our neighbors around us. So God gave him a king. His name was Saul. Now the rule is obey or sacrifice. My boy didn't obey. He sacrificed $1,500 for that car out of his savings, and it has been a millstone around his neck ever since. He can't sell that car to anybody. I mean, nobody wants that car, really. It's not all that bad looking. You just have to drive it. So God gave him Saul. Now, this is the way things work. We had kings and priests who chose a king. And the king appointed officers and servants to tend to himself and to keep peace in the land and to fight the people's wars. So the king appointed nobles under him. And now, instead of having just one class of people, we have 3 classes. We have the controlling stockholder, then we have the enforcers, and then we have the people. Now don't forget that, because that's the structure of society today. Nothing has been changed. It is either a sheep society or a wolf society. You copy a wolf system, you can get a wolf system on your own without having a wolf anywhere around. You obey a sacrifice. God said, if you do get a king, I'm going to let you have that car. But what's going to happen is, he's going to take your lands and he's going to give them to his people. He's going to take your boys and he's going to put them in the office. He's going to take your women and he's going to make cooks out of them. And he is going to be your master and you're going to be his slave. But boss, we got to have it. So he let them have it. In time, you had a real tyrannical king. And you had a revolution. And you had a war between the states. And you had a real division there. And bad kings. And you have a king who gets his hooks into you. You do what he says, or he'll kill you. That's what he'll do. It's real uncomfortable to stand up to the king. Ask P. Peters. He'll tell you. The people did evil in the sight of the Lord. And the Lord said, I've had it right up to here. So much for you. So, the northern kingdom was taken out into captivity. And then the southern kingdom was taken out into captivity. The northern kingdom went into the region, which is now eastern Turkey, around the area of the Black Sea. Now, if you get to the Black Sea, you are naturally spread all over the world. The Black Sea is just like the palm of my hand, and my fingers represent the rivers. You take this river, you're going up the Danube River, and you run into the Rhine River, and now you're in the North Sea. And it was called the Unseen Sea. You take this river, you go right straight on to the Baltic. You take this river, you go into the middle part of Russia. You take that river, you go over here. You hit the Black Sea, you're all over the world instantly. 721 years before Jesus Christ. We went across the United States in 150 years. They had 700 years to go anywhere they want to, and they went all over the place. But a few years afterwards, 50,000 came back out of captivity to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. Now, in the northern part, you have a sea up there called the Sea of Galilee. There were a few people left around the Sea of Galilee when the Babylonians took the the people from Samaria, that land, took them into captivity. They left a few people there. Now, if you leave just a few families around, how many do you reckon you're going to have in 721 years, huh? You're going to have a raft of people. And that's what it was. They had a raft of people around there. The most productive area at all was the area around the Sea of Galilee. They had cities there. The plains were fruitful. These were the children of Israel that had been left there and just had multiplied. All right, now, what have we got? What have we got? When they took the northern kingdom into captivity, the land was vacant. The cities were vacant. Vacant cities produced no income. So, the king of Babylon took some Arab, moved them into Samaria. They have a whole different group of people living there. In Judea, they took the Judeans, the two tribes of Judah, took them into captivity. And what happened there? Esau, Edom, they moved into that southern part of Palestine, what was later Palestine. So, when the people came back to Jerusalem to build the temple, rebuild the temple, what did we have exactly? In the northern part around the Sea of Galilee, we had a really prosperous area where you had Israelites around the Sea of Galilee. South of that, you had these people who called themselves Samaritans. They were actually, I guess today we'd say, of Arab descent, who worshiped a strange god. Then south of that, you had in Jerusalem, you had Israelites and some others who had come along with them. And in the southern part of the country, you had a group of people called Esau Edom. All of those people lived in what was later the Roman province of Judea. And all were known to the Romans as what? Jews. Didn't make a difference whether you are Israelite, didn't make a difference whether you're Samaritan, whether you came from Jerusalem, whether you came from Judea. It didn't make any difference whether you're Samaritan, Edomite, Galilean, what you were. You, to a Roman, you are a Jew from Judea, from that province. There was a fellow later on, we had this Maccabean revolt. And I'd like to take some time to go into that, but I don't have time now. But we did have a fellow named Hyrcanus. He was one of these Jews from Jerusalem, of a noble family. And he was a great conqueror. But he didn't have enough Israelites to do much conquering on his own, so he accepted into his army just about anything that had two legs and walked. And he did what is not supposed to be done. He went down and he conquered Judea and the Edomites down there. And being really quite short of people, long on ideas and short of people, he made these Edomites honorary Jews, honorary Israelites. So he did the thing that is forbidden by law. We've got a problem of tremendous proportions rising. After Hyrcanus, there was a man from Edom called Herod, actually the father of Herod. He said he could collect more taxes for the Romans than anyone else. And so the Romans let him do it, and he did a good job. As time went on, they made him a king. Herod, the Edomite king, felt no compulsion at all about killing Israelite children. To him, it was no big deal. After the time of Herod, we have a period of time in which evil was in the land. You had a wolf for a ruler. You had people violating all the laws. And Jesus Christ said he was come to save that which was lost. He came to reform and to take his people back to their God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And Jesus Christ preached from all the ancient books, and he taught the people again the things they should know. You either obey or sacrifice. The Israelites of Judea did not obey. They chose instead to sacrifice. And I'm going to tell you how war started, and I want to continue this on the next hour. But the Romans were great at provoking people into fighting wars. Rome wanted a war with Jerusalem because in Jerusalem was a temple. And in that temple was supposed to have been untold wealth. If I am correct, all the money that Paul sent back to the church from the tithes from all over the communities, Israelite communities all over the world, went to that temple. The Romans went there to provoke the Judeans in Jerusalem. And you could hardly provoke them because they weren't provocable. But if you go about it right, you can do it. And the Romans got the war started, and you'll never guess how they did it. One of the Romans went before the walls, one of the Roman soldiers went before the walls of Jerusalem and mooned them. Now this is an honest-to-goodness fact. It's in Josephus. And that infuriated the Israelites so bad they came rushing out of the walls to fight the Roman soldiers. And that's how the war started. Different strokes for different folks. Now I want to tell you the next hour about the Battle of Jerusalem and the great conquest and the great treasure taken by the Roman soldiers. Thank you.
The preceding message by circuit riding preacher Peter Peters from the LaPorte Church of Christ, located at the base of the beautiful Colorado Rocky Mountains in LaPorte, Colorado, has been aired on the Scripture for America Worldwide Broadcasting Network and is available on CD or DVD and is archived at the website scripturesforamerica.org. Remember, circuit rider, preacher, and teacher Peter Peters broadcasts live nightly from his Wyoming radio ranch, nestled in the Laramie, Wyoming River Valley. It's a working horse and cattle ranch where circuit riding preacher Dr. Peters reaches the lost sheep of the House of Israel worldwide on satellite, internet, and shortwave radio. Dial settings 5755 and 9480. Check out the 24-hour, 7 days a week web broadcasting website sfawbn.com. Scriptures for America Worldwide Broadcasting Network is made possible by the prayers and tithes of the faithful. If you want to write to circuit riding preacher Peter Peters, the address is Scriptures for America, P.O. Box 766, LaPorte, Colorado 0535. Or you can visit us on the web at www.scripturesforamerica.org. The preacher will be riding back this way next week and hopes you will too.
This is our Father's world, and we are His children, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We serve the great I Am, and it is here in this world we labor and live to take dominion and establish His kingdom. Let all know indeed this is our Father's world.
This is my Father's world, or let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems off so strong, God is the ruler yet. This is my Father's world. Why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad. This is my Father's world. The battle is not done. Jesus who died shall be satisfied, and heaven and earth be one, and heaven and earth be one. Don't you know in the moment when the Israelites didn't do what they were told because of the stubbornness they failed the test? When they wavered, the faith each time by their whining and their crying, and then they sighed, oh Lord. Then he told them this: go on another lap around Mount Sinai till you learn your lesson, till you stop your whining and you quit your rebelling, till you learn to stand in your day of testing by trusting and obeying the Lord. Have you ever been in a situation where the Lord asked you to wait upon Him? You could not stand, you could not remain still. Started planning what you're gonna do because you thought the Lord had forgotten you. Just then you heard words: go on and take another lap around Mount Sinai till you learn your lesson, till you stop your whining and you quit your rebelling, till you learn to stand in your day of testing by trusting and obeying the Lord. Just the other day I heard the Lord say, man, you gotta take another step of faith and trust me to carry you through the storm. When the storm started getting rough, well, I thought the Lord wasn't strong. He started doing things on my own. Then he said, take another lap around Mount Sinai till you learn your lesson, till you stop your whining and you quit your rebelling, till you learn to stand in your day testing by trusting and obeying the Lord. Go on and take another lap around Mount Sinai till you learn your lesson, till you stop your whining and you quit your rebelling, till you learn to stand day of testing by trusting and obeying the Lord, by trusting and obeying the Lord. We are standing on holy ground. I know that there are angels all around. Let us praise Jesus now. We are standing in His presence on holy ground. We are standing